I stood in my father's office, diploma in hand, prepared to hear the words I had been waiting for my entire life. The leather furniture smelled of old money and tradition. Behind his mahogany desk hung portraits of 3 generations of lawyers, all men, all wearing the same expression of stern authority. I had just finished top of my class at law school. My thesis on corporate restructuring had been published in 2 prestigious journals. I was ready. "This is ridiculous, Dad," I said, when he told me I was not allowed to join our family law firm. My voice trembled despite my attempt to sound confident. "I have worked for this my entire life." Discussion closed. He did not even look up from the papers he was reviewing. His signature was bold and careless across the bottom of a contract. "My legacy goes to your brother. Women do not make good lawyers." The words hit me like a physical blow. I had heard his outdated opinions before, dismissed them as generational ignorance that would fade when confronted with my achievements. I was wrong. My brother Austin stood in the corner of the office, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable but saying nothing. He had graduated 2 years after me, middle of his class, with no publications and a reputation for showing up late to everything except happy hour. "Austin barely passed the bar exam," I said, unable to contain my frustration. "I scored in the top percentile. I have 3 job offers from firms in Seattle." "Then take one of them." My father finally looked at me, his expression unchanged. "This firm has been in our family for 60 years. I will not watch you destroy that legacy with emotional arguments and sensitivity. Law requires strength, aggression, decisiveness. Your brother has those qualities." I wanted to scream that I had spent summers during college working as a paralegal at this very firm. I had organized files, researched cases, drafted motions that my father submitted under his own name. I had memorized every client, every case strategy, every billing code. I knew this firm better than Austin ever would, but I said nothing. I placed my diploma on his desk and walked out. That was 2 years ago. Now I sat in my apartment in Phoenix, reviewing documents for the small firm where I had been working since that devastating conversation. The firm handled mostly contract disputes and minor corporate issues. It was respectable work, but it was not what I had prepared for. It was not the legacy I deserved. My phone rang. The caller identification showed a number I did not recognize. "This is Willow," I answered. "Miss Willow? This is Janet from Blackstone Manufacturing. We met briefly at the legal conference last month." Her voice was professional, but carried an edge of urgency. "I need to discuss something sensitive. Can we meet tomorrow?" Blackstone Manufacturing was one of my father's oldest clients. They produced industrial equipment and had been with his firm for over 30 years. My pulse quickened. "Of course," I said. "Where would you like to meet?" We agreed on a coffee shop downtown, away from both our offices. I spent the rest of the evening researching Blackstone, though I already knew most of their history. They were a $50 million company with operations across 3 states. My father had handled everything from their employee contracts to their supplier agreements. Losing them would hurt his firm significantly. The next morning, I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early. Janet arrived exactly on time, wearing a gray suit and carrying a leather portfolio. She was perhaps 50, with sharp eyes that assessed me carefully as she sat down. "Thank you for meeting with me," she said after we ordered. "I will be direct. Your father's firm has been making mistakes, serious ones. 3 months ago, they missed a filing deadline that almost cost us a major contract. Last month, they gave us advice about a merger that turned out to be legally questionable. We had to hire outside counsel to fix it." I listened carefully, keeping my expression neutral despite the satisfaction building inside me. My father prided himself on never making mistakes. His arrogance had always assumed perfection. "Austin has been handling most of our work lately," Janet continued. "Your father seems to be stepping back, preparing for succession. But Austin is not ready. He does not return calls promptly. He does not understand our industry. Frankly, we are losing confidence." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Because I did my research after we met last month. Your academic record is exceptional. Your current firm speaks highly of you. And several people mentioned that you grew up around your father's practice, that you know it inside and out." She leaned forward. "Blackstone is considering switching firms. But what we really need is someone who understands both law and business, someone who will treat our account with the attention it deserves. I wanted to know if you might be interested in taking us on as a client." This was exactly what I needed. Not just any client, but one of my father's most valuable accounts. The irony was perfect. He had refused me a place in his legacy, claimed I lacked the qualities necessary for success. Now I had the opportunity to prove him catastrophically wrong. "I would be very interested," I said carefully. "But I should mention that your current firm is my father's. There could be complications." "I am aware," Janet said. "That is actually part of the appeal. I suspect you will be motivated to do exceptional work." She was right about that. The meeting with Janet lasted another hour. She outlined Blackstone's legal needs, their frustrations with my father's firm, and their timeline for making a decision. They wanted to switch representation within the next 60 days. That gave me 2 months to prepare. I spent the evening in my apartment, surrounded by files and notes. The firm where I currently worked was small, just 3 attorneys handling routine cases. They were good people, but they did not have the infrastructure to handle a client like Blackstone. I needed to make a move, and I needed to make it carefully. The next day, I called an old friend from law school. Vivian had started her own boutique firm 2 years ago, focusing on corporate clients. She was smart, ambitious, and most importantly, she owed me a favor. I had helped her study for the bar exam when she was struggling, spending countless late nights reviewing material until she passed. "I need to talk to you about an opportunity," I said when she answered. "Can we meet this week?" We met at her office, a modern space in a renovated building downtown. Vivian had done well for herself. Her firm had grown to include 2 junior associates and a paralegal. She specialized in mid-sized companies that needed sophisticated legal work, but could not afford the rates of major firms. I explained the situation with Blackstone, leaving out the personal details about my father. I framed it as a significant client that was dissatisfied with their current representation and looking for better service. "This is exactly the kind of account we need," Vivian said, her eyes bright with interest. "But I have to ask, why are you bringing this to me instead of trying to land them yourself?" "Because I cannot handle an account this size alone," I said honestly. "Blackstone needs a full-service firm. They need multiple attorneys, support staff, resources. You have that infrastructure. I do not. So what are you proposing?" "I want to join your firm as a partner. I bring Blackstone with me, handle their account directly, and help you build the corporate practice. We split the profits according to whatever arrangement makes sense." Vivian was quiet for a moment, considering. I could see her calculating the numbers, weighing the risks against the potential reward. Blackstone would immediately make her firm more profitable and prestigious. It would open doors to other corporate clients. "If I agree to this, you need to be certain Blackstone will actually make the switch," she said finally. "I cannot afford to bring on a new partner based on a client that might not materialize." "I am meeting with their executive team next week," I said. "I will have a commitment letter before I formally join your firm. You have my word." We shook hands. The partnership agreement would take a few weeks to finalize, but we had a deal in principle. I was building something my father had denied me, and I was doing it with one of his most valued clients. The meeting with Blackstone's executive team took place in their conference room, a space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Janet was there, along with their chief financial officer and chief operating officer. They asked detailed questions about my experience, my approach to legal strategy, and how I would handle their account differently than my father's firm. I was prepared. I had spent days reviewing every case my father had handled for them over the past decade. I identified patterns where he had been slow to respond, areas where his advice had been too conservative, opportunities where more creative legal strategies could have saved them money or opened new possibilities. "Your current firm treats you as one client among many," I said during my presentation. "I am proposing that you become the cornerstone account of a firm that will prioritize your needs, respond within hours instead of days, and approach your legal challenges with the kind of creative thinking that comes from truly understanding your business." The chief financial officer, a man named Douglas, leaned back in his chair. "You are asking us to take a significant risk. Your father's firm has decades of experience. You are proposing we switch to a firm that, frankly, we have never heard of." "I understand your concern," I said. "That is why I am offering a 60-day trial period. Keep your current firm on retainer for routine matters, but give us one significant project. If we do not exceed your expectations, you can return to your previous arrangement with no hard feelings." They exchanged glances. It was a reasonable offer, one that minimized their risk while giving me the opportunity to prove myself. After a brief discussion, they agreed. They would give us a complex contract negotiation that needed to be completed within 45 days. If we succeeded, the full account would be ours. I left the meeting feeling electric with possibility. This was really happening. I was about to take one of my father's oldest clients, not through underhanded tactics or sabotage, but by offering better service and more competent representation. The satisfaction was overwhelming. That evening, I called my mother. She had always been caught in the middle of the conflict between my father and me, trying to maintain peace while privately sympathizing with my frustration. She knew about my father's decision to exclude me from the firm, and she had argued with him about it, though her arguments had gone nowhere. "Mom, I need to tell you something," I said when she answered. "But you cannot share it with Dad yet." "What is it, honey?" Her voice was concerned. "I am joining a new firm as a partner, and I am bringing one of Dad's biggest clients with me." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then she spoke quietly. "Are you certain this is what you want to do? Your father will be furious." "I am certain," I said. "He made his choice 2 years ago. Now I am making mine." The partnership with Vivian was formalized 3 weeks later. I moved into an office at her firm, a corner space with windows and enough room for the files and reference materials I would need for the Blackstone account. The nameplate on the door read, "Willow Partner," and every time I saw it, I felt a surge of vindication. This was what my father had denied me. I had built it anyway. The contract negotiation for Blackstone was complex. They were entering into a joint venture with a company in Denver, and the deal involved intellectual property rights, liability allocation, and dispute resolution mechanisms that needed to be carefully structured. It was exactly the kind of high-stakes work I had been trained to handle. I worked 18-hour days for 2 weeks straight. I reviewed every clause, researched precedents in 3 different jurisdictions, and consulted with industry experts about technical aspects of the manufacturing processes involved. Vivian helped with the research and document drafting, but I led every meeting with the client and handled all negotiations with the other side's attorneys. The opposing counsel was a firm in Denver that specialized in joint ventures. They were competent but predictable, relying on standard templates and conventional approaches. I found 3 provisions in their initial draft that would have been disadvantageous to Blackstone, clauses hidden in dense legal language that would have given the other company disproportionate control. "How did you catch these?" Douglas asked during one of our review meetings. He was looking at my red-lined version of the contract, where I had highlighted the problematic sections in yellow and provided detailed explanations. "Experience and attention to detail," I said. "These are the kinds of clauses that look reasonable on first reading but create problems later. Your previous firm might have missed them because they were reviewing quickly, treating this as routine work. We are not doing that." Janet smiled slightly. "Your father's firm would have approved this contract with minimal changes. They would have told us it was standard and we should just sign." "That would have been a mistake," I said. "A costly one. The negotiations took another 3 weeks. I pushed back on every unfavorable term, proposed creative compromises when we encountered genuine conflicts of interest, and drafted alternative language that protected Blackstone's interests without being unreasonably aggressive. The other side's attorneys were initially frustrated by my thoroughness, but eventually they developed a grudging respect. I was not making frivolous objections. Every change I proposed was substantive and justified. When we finally reached agreement, the contract was 15 pages longer than the initial draft and significantly more favorable to Blackstone. Douglas ran the numbers and estimated that my revisions would save the company approximately $2 million over the 5-year term of the joint venture, primarily through better allocation of costs and clearer performance metrics. "I am recommending to the board that we move all our legal work to your firm," he said during our final meeting. "This has been the most competent representation we have received in years." I kept my expression professional, but inside I was celebrating. This was more than just landing a major client. This was proof that my father had been wrong about everything, wrong about my abilities, wrong about women in law, wrong about who deserved his legacy. The official announcement came 2 weeks later. Blackstone sent a letter to my father's firm terminating their representation, effective immediately. They cited concerns about quality of service and responsiveness, thanked the firm for their years of work, and wished them well. It was polite and professional, but the message was clear. They were leaving. My father called me 3 hours after he received the letter. I was in my office reviewing documents for another potential client when my phone rang. I looked at the caller identification for a long moment before answering. "Hello, Dad," I said calmly. "What the hell did you do?" His voice was shaking with rage. "Blackstone just fired us. After 30 years, they fired us, and Janet specifically requested that we forward all their files to your firm. Your firm, Willow. You stole my client." "I did not steal anything," I said. "They came to me because they were unhappy with the service they were receiving. I provided better representation. That is how the legal profession works. You went behind my back. You deliberately sabotaged my practice. This is unethical. It is unprofessional, and it is unforgivable." I felt a surge of anger so intense that I had to pause before responding. "You want to talk about unprofessional? You denied me a position at your firm because of my gender. You gave my legacy to Austin despite the fact that he was less qualified in every measurable way. You told me I was not good enough because I was a woman. Now you are angry because I proved you wrong. I built that firm from nothing," he said. "Everything you are using against me I taught you. Every skill, every strategy, every connection. You owe me." "I owe you nothing," I said. "I earned my education, my reputation, and my clients through my own work. You had the chance to be part of my success. You chose not to take it. That is not my problem." He was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was colder, more controlled. "This is not over, Willow. You just made an enemy of your own father. I hope it was worth it." "It was," I said, and ended the call. I sat in my office afterward, hands trembling slightly from the adrenaline. This was the confrontation I had been both dreading and anticipating. My father knew now that I was serious, that I was not going to quietly accept his rejection. The war between us had officially begun, and I had just won the first major battle. Vivian knocked on my door a few minutes later. "I heard your phone call through the wall," she said. "Are you okay?" "I am better than okay," I said. "I just proved that everything my father believed about me was wrong, and this is only the beginning." Word spread quickly through Phoenix's legal community. Within a week, everyone knew that Blackstone Manufacturing had left my father's firm for mine. The gossip was inevitable in a city where attorneys knew each other's business, where partnerships and client movements were tracked as carefully as stock prices. Some of my father's colleagues called to congratulate me, their voices careful and diplomatic. They had worked with me during my paralegal days, remembered my competence, and were unsurprised by my success. Others were colder, viewing my actions as a betrayal of family loyalty. I did not care about their opinions. I cared about building my practice and proving that merit mattered more than gender or family connections. 3 more of my father's clients reached out within the month. 2 were smaller manufacturing companies that had heard about the work I did for Blackstone. The third was a real estate development company that had been with my father's firm for 15 years. They were all experiencing the same problems: slow response times, lack of attention to detail, and a sense that Austin was learning on the job at their expense. I met with each of them, listened to their concerns, and provided honest assessments of whether my firm could serve them better. I was not interested in stealing clients just for revenge. I wanted to build a sustainable practice based on excellent work. But the fact that these opportunities were coming from my father's client list added a satisfying dimension to my professional success. The real estate company, Pinnacle Developments, was particularly interesting. They were planning a major mixed-use project downtown, something that would require navigating zoning laws, environmental regulations, and complex financing arrangements. It was exactly the kind of sophisticated work that separated competent attorneys from exceptional ones. The owner, a woman named Gloria, met me for lunch at a restaurant in the Arts District. She was perhaps 60, with silver hair and an air of someone who had built her success through decades of hard work rather than inheritance. "Your father handled my first commercial property purchase 20 years ago," she said after we ordered. "Back then, he was sharp, aggressive, always 3 steps ahead of potential problems. But something has changed in the past few years. He seems distracted, and your brother is not ready to fill his shoes." "What happened specifically?" I asked. "Austin missed a deadline for a zoning variance application last year. It delayed our project by 6 months and cost us nearly $500,000 in holding costs and lost revenue. Your father apologized, reduced his fees, promised it would not happen again, but it created doubt. When you are planning a $50 million development, you cannot afford doubt about your legal representation." I took notes as she described the upcoming project. It involved purchasing and combining 3 separate parcels, demolishing existing structures, and building a complex that would include retail space, offices, and residential units. The regulatory challenges alone would require hundreds of hours of legal work. "I can handle this," I said when she finished. "But I should be clear about something. If you hire my firm, my father will know. He will view it as another betrayal. That might create complications in the business community." Gloria smiled slightly. "I am not concerned about your father's feelings. I am concerned about protecting my investment and completing this project on schedule. If you can do that better than his firm, then you have the job." We shook hands. She would send over the preliminary documents within the week, and we would begin work immediately. That brought my total to 4 clients, taken from my father's practice in less than 2 months. The financial impact on his firm must have been significant. Each of these companies represented steady, high-value work. Losing them would force him to either take on new clients to compensate or reduce his overhead by laying off staff. I felt no guilt about this. He had built his firm on the assumption that his legacy mattered more than competence, that traditional gender roles should determine who succeeded in law. Now he was learning that clients cared about results, not about maintaining outdated family businesses. My mother called that evening. Her voice was strained. "Your father is not handling this well, Willow. He is angry all the time. He barely sleeps. He keeps talking about how you betrayed the family." "I did not betray anyone," I said. "I am building a career that he denied me access to. If his clients prefer my work, that is a reflection on the quality of his service, not on my loyalty." "He is talking about taking legal action," she said quietly. "Something about tortious interference or breach of fiduciary duty. I do not understand the details, but he has been meeting with attorneys who specialize in professional disputes." This was a concerning development. My father was vindictive enough to file a frivolous lawsuit just to punish me, even if he had no real legal basis. A lawsuit would be expensive to defend, time-consuming, and potentially damaging to my reputation regardless of the outcome. "Let him try," I said, sounding more confident than I felt. "I have not done anything unethical. His clients chose to leave because they were unhappy with his service. That is not illegal." "Please be careful," my mother said. "Your father can be ruthless when he feels threatened. And right now, he feels very threatened." After we hung up, I sat in my apartment considering the implications. A lawsuit from my father would be more than just a legal inconvenience. It would be a public spectacle, family drama played out in court filings and depositions. The legal community would gossip about it for months. Some potential clients might avoid me just to stay out of the conflict. But I also knew that my father's threat might be empty. Filing a lawsuit would require him to prove that I had done something improper, that I had somehow interfered with his client relationships through deception or coercion. He could not prove that because it was not true. His clients left because Austin was incompetent and because my father's arrogance had made him complacent. Still, I needed to be prepared. I called Vivian and explained the situation. She listened carefully, then made several notes on a legal pad. "If he files, we will defend aggressively," she said. "But more importantly, we will make it expensive for him. We will file motions, demand extensive discovery, take depositions of everyone at his firm. We will turn this into such a time-consuming nightmare that he will regret starting it. And we will win, because you have not done anything wrong." "I hope it does not come to that," I said. "So do I. But if it does, we will be ready." I spent the rest of the evening reviewing my files, making sure that every interaction with former clients of my father's firm had been documented, every conversation appropriate, every engagement letter clear and professional. I had been careful throughout this process, knowing that my father might react badly, but I wanted to be absolutely certain that there were no vulnerabilities he could exploit. The documents confirmed what I already knew. My conduct had been completely ethical. I had not solicited clients in violation of any rules. I had not made false statements about my father's firm. I had simply provided better legal services when clients came to me seeking alternatives. That was not just ethical. It was how the legal profession was supposed to work. Austin called me a week later. It was late evening, and I was working on a brief for Pinnacle Developments when my phone rang. I almost did not answer when I saw his name, but curiosity won out. "Willow, we need to talk," he said. His voice lacked the hostility I had heard from my father. Instead, he sounded tired and perhaps a little desperate. "About what?" I asked carefully. "About what you are doing to the firm, to Dad, to our family." "I am not doing anything to anyone," I said. "I am building my own practice. The fact that some clients prefer my work is not my fault." 4 clients have left in 2 months, Austin said. 4 major clients. Our revenue is down 30%. Dad is talking about laying off 2 of our paralegals. Do you understand what that means? "It means he is facing the consequences of providing mediocre legal services," I said. "It means you are not as competent as he claimed you were when he gave you my position." There was a long pause. When Austin spoke again, his voice was quieter. "You are right. I am not ready for this. I never wanted to be a lawyer, Willow. Dad pushed me into it because he needed a son to carry on the legacy. But I do not have your instincts, your attention to detail, your passion for the work. I am failing, and it is obvious to everyone except Dad." This admission surprised me. Austin and I had never been particularly close. He was 4 years younger, had spent his childhood playing sports while I studied legal briefs, and had always seemed content to coast on the advantages of being male in our father's traditional worldview. Hearing him acknowledge his inadequacy was unexpected. "If you know you are not ready, why did you accept the position?" I asked. "Because Dad told me it was my duty," Austin said. "Because I was 24 years old, and he made it seem like refusing would be a betrayal. Because I thought maybe I could learn on the job, figure it out as I went." But it is not working. The clients can tell. The other attorneys at the firm can tell. Everyone knows except Dad, who refuses to see reality. What do you want from me, Austin? I want you to stop, he said. Stop taking our clients. Stop trying to destroy the firm. Give Dad a chance to fix things before it is too late. I felt a flash of anger. I am not trying to destroy anything. I am succeeding at the career Dad told me I was not qualified for because I am a woman. If his firm is failing, it is because he made a catastrophically bad decision 2 years ago when he chose gender over competence. I know that, Austin said. Believe me, I know. But he is our father. Does that not matter to you at all? He stopped being my father when he told me I was not good enough because of my gender, I said. He chose his prejudice over his daughter. I am simply showing him the cost of that choice. Austin was silent for a long moment. There is something else you should know, he said finally. Dad is not just talking about suing you. He is actively working on it. He has hired a firm that specializes in professional liability cases. They are investigating whether they can claim you violated ethical rules by soliciting clients or using confidential information from your time as a paralegal. My stomach tightened. This was more serious than I had thought. If my father could build even a questionable case about ethical violations, it could trigger a bar investigation. Even if I was eventually cleared, the investigation itself would be damaging. I never solicited anyone, I said. They came to me, and I never used confidential information. Everything I know about those clients came from public records, or from what they told me directly. I believe you, Austin said. But Dad is looking for any angle. He is going through old files, trying to find something he can use against you. He is obsessed with this, Willow. It is consuming him. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Why are you warning me about Dad's plans? Because this has gone too far, Austin said. Because I do not want to watch our family destroy itself over a law firm. And because, honestly, you deserve better than what Dad gave you. You should have been the one running this firm. Everyone who works here knows that. We have all watched you excel while I struggle, and it is obvious that Dad made the wrong choice. This conversation was not going the way I expected. I had assumed Austin would be defensive, would support our father's position, even if he privately had doubts. Instead, he was acknowledging the injustice of the situation and warning me about the escalation. What do you want me to do with this information? I asked. Protect yourself, Austin said. Make sure you have documentation for everything. And maybe consider whether there is a way to resolve this that does not end with Dad losing everything he built. He chose this path, I said. He could have included me in the firm. He could have acknowledged that I was qualified. He could have treated me as an equal instead of dismissing me because of outdated prejudice. He made his choices. Now he lives with the consequences. I understand, Austin said quietly. I just wanted you to know what is coming. Be careful, Willow. He hung up before I could respond. I sat in my office afterward, thinking about the conversation. Austin's warning about my father's investigation was useful, but it also revealed something more important. My father was becoming increasingly desperate. Desperate people made mistakes. They overreached, acted impulsively, revealed weaknesses that could be exploited. I called Vivian and updated her on the conversation. She listened carefully, then suggested we schedule a meeting with an attorney who specialized in legal ethics and professional responsibility. We needed expert advice about how to protect against my father's potential claims. The meeting took place 2 days later. The ethics attorney, a man named Jeffrey who had spent 20 years defending lawyers against bar complaints, reviewed my files and asked detailed questions about my interactions with each former client of my father's firm. Your conduct has been entirely appropriate, he said after 2 hours of review. You did not solicit these clients in violation of any rules. They approached you. You did not make false or misleading statements about your father's firm. You simply provided better service. That is not just ethical. It is how competition is supposed to work in the legal profession. What about the claim that I might have used confidential information from when I worked as a paralegal? I asked. It is baseless, Jeffrey said. The information you used to serve these clients was either publicly available or provided directly by the clients themselves. The fact that you once worked at your father's firm does not create a permanent conflict or confidentiality obligation regarding clients you now represent ethically. If your father files a bar complaint based on these facts, it will be dismissed. This was reassuring, but I knew my father might file anyway just to harass me. Even a frivolous complaint would require time and energy to defend. Can we do anything proactively? Vivian asked. Document everything, Jeffrey said. Every client interaction, every conversation, every decision. If this escalates, you want a clear record showing that your conduct has been impeccable. Beyond that, just continue doing excellent work. Your best defense is your reputation. The anticipated lawsuit never came. Instead, something worse happened. My father launched a quiet campaign to damage my reputation within the legal community. It started subtly. Attorneys who had been friendly began acting distant. A judge I had known for years was suddenly cold during a routine hearing. 2 potential clients who had scheduled consultations canceled at the last minute without explanation. I did not understand what was happening until a colleague pulled me aside at a bar association meeting. Thomas was an older attorney who had known my father for decades, but had always treated me with respect. You need to know what is being said about you, Thomas told me quietly. We were standing in a corner of the reception hall, away from other attendees. Your father has been telling people that you stole confidential client information when you worked as a paralegal. He is claiming you used that information to poach his clients unethically. He is not filing formal complaints. He is just spreading rumors. My hands clenched. This was worse than a lawsuit I could defend against in court with evidence and legal arguments. Rumors were harder to fight. They spread through whispered conversations and knowing looks, damaging reputations without the accountability of formal proceedings. None of that is true, I said. I know, Thomas said. I worked with you years ago. I know your character. But not everyone does. And your father has credibility in this community. People listen when he speaks. What exactly is he saying? That you deliberately undermined his firm from within. That you cultivated relationships with his clients while working there, then stole them the moment you left. That you used confidential, strategic information to undercut his legal advice and make yourself look better by comparison. He is framing this as a betrayal of trust, not as fair competition. I felt sick. My father was weaponizing the time I had spent working at his firm, the experience I had gained trying to prove my worth, and turning it into evidence of wrongdoing. It was brilliant in its cruelty and completely dishonest. How widespread is this? I asked. Widespread enough that people are talking, Thomas said. Your father has lunch with judges, drinks with managing partners at major firms, plays golf with potential clients. He is using every social connection he has to poison the well against you. Why are you telling me this? Because it is wrong, Thomas said simply. Because I watched you work harder than anyone else to earn respect in this profession. Because your father's treatment of you was discriminatory, and everyone knew it. You deserve better than this. I thanked Thomas and left the reception early. My mind was racing with anger and calculation. My father had escalated the conflict in a way that was difficult to counter directly. I could not sue him for defamation. The statements were too vague and made in private conversations. I could not file a bar complaint. He had not violated any ethical rules. I could only continue doing excellent work and hope that my reputation would eventually overcome his whispered campaign. But that felt passive, defensive, reactive. I had not come this far by accepting whatever my father chose to inflict on me. I needed a strategy that would neutralize his attacks while continuing to build my practice. The solution came to me 3 days later, while reviewing files for Pinnacle Developments, Gloria had mentioned during one of our meetings that she knew several other commercial real estate developers who were unhappy with their current legal representation. She had offered to make introductions if I was interested in expanding my client base. I called her and asked if she would be willing to write a letter of recommendation describing the legal work my firm had done for her company. She agreed immediately. "Your work has been exceptional," Gloria said. "I would be happy to tell other people about it." Within a week, I had letters of recommendation from Gloria, from Blackstone's executive team, and from the 2 smaller manufacturing companies I had taken from my father's firm. Each letter was detailed and specific, describing the quality of my legal analysis, my responsiveness, and the measurable value I had provided. I compiled these letters into a portfolio, along with descriptions of the significant matters I had handled. Then I began systematically reaching out to potential clients, not just companies that were unhappy with my father's firm, but any business that might benefit from sophisticated corporate legal services. The response was remarkable. Companies that might have been hesitant to hire a relatively young attorney with a small firm were reassured by the endorsements from established businesses. Within 6 weeks, I had signed 4 new clients that had no connection to my father's practice. These were companies I had won through my own merit and marketing, not through any conflict with his firm. The effect on my father's rumor campaign was significant. It is harder to claim someone is unethical when they are publicly accumulating satisfied clients and strong recommendations. The whispered doubts began to fade as my reputation grew based on actual performance, rather than family drama. But I wanted more than just professional success. I wanted my father to understand completely how wrong he had been. I wanted him to face a moment of undeniable clarity about the cost of his prejudice. The opportunity came 2 months later. The Phoenix Business Journal published its annual ranking of corporate law firms based on client satisfaction, case outcomes, and revenue growth. My firm, despite being small and recently formed, ranked in the top 20. My father's firm, which had been in the top 10 for years, had dropped to number 37. The article specifically mentioned that several established firms had lost ground to newer, more agile competitors. It quoted an unnamed industry expert saying that the legal market was shifting toward attorneys who prioritize client service over tradition and legacy. I saw the article online at 7 in the morning. By 9, I had received congratulatory calls from 6 different attorneys. By noon, 2 more potential clients had reached out requesting consultations. The ranking was not just validation, it was marketing, proof that my approach was succeeding in ways that could be measured and compared. My father called that afternoon. I considered not answering, but I wanted to hear his reaction. "You must be very proud of yourself," he said when I picked up. His voice was tight with controlled fury. "Destroying everything I built, humiliating me in front of the entire legal community, turning my own son against me." "I did not destroy anything," I said calmly. "I built something better. Your firm is declining because you prioritized gender over competence, because you gave important work to someone who was not ready instead of to someone who had earned it. This is not my fault. This is consequences. You will regret this," he said. "I promise you that. You think you have won, but this is far from over." "I think it is over," I said. "I think you have lost, and you are finally realizing it. Your legacy is failing while mine succeeds. That is not revenge. That is justice." I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from satisfaction, from vindication, from the pure pleasure of knowing that I had proven him catastrophically wrong about everything. 6 months after taking my first client from my father's firm, I received an unexpected phone call. The caller was Harrison, the managing partner at one of the largest corporate law firms in Phoenix. His firm represented Fortune 500 companies and handled billion-dollar transactions. I had never spoken with him directly before, though I knew of his reputation. "I have been watching your career progression with interest," Harrison said after the preliminary greetings. "Your work for Blackstone and Pinnacle has been impressive. Very impressive. I wanted to discuss a potential opportunity. We met at his office 2 days later. The space occupied 3 floors of a downtown high-rise, with conference rooms that overlooked the entire city. Harrison was perhaps 65, with gray hair and the confidence of someone who had spent decades at the top of his profession. "I will be direct," he said after we sat down. "Our firm is looking to expand our corporate practice. We want to bring in partners who have strong client relationships and proven track records. Based on your recent success, I think you might be a good fit." I had not anticipated this. Harrison's firm was exactly the kind of place I had dreamed of working when I was in law school. They handled sophisticated high-stakes matters. They paid exceptionally well. They had resources that my current small firm could never match. "I am flattered," I said carefully. "But I am curious why you are approaching me now. 6 months ago, I was working at a small firm handling routine matters. What changed?" "What changed is that you proved yourself," Harrison said. "You took on significant clients, handled complex matters competently, and built a reputation quickly. That kind of initiative and skill is exactly what we look for in lateral partners." "Did you know that most of my recent clients came from my father's firm?" I asked. "That there has been significant conflict within the legal community about my methods?" "I am aware of the situation," Harrison said. "I am also aware that your father has been spreading rumors about ethical violations that have no basis in fact. I have looked into this carefully. Your conduct has been entirely appropriate. The clients left his firm because they were dissatisfied with the service they received. You provided better representation. That is how the market is supposed to work." We spent the next hour discussing the specifics of what a partnership would involve. Harrison's firm wanted me to bring my existing clients with me and continue building the corporate practice. They would provide support staff, research resources, and the backing of their institutional reputation. In exchange, I would become an equity partner with a significant share of the profits from my matters. "I need to think about this," I said. "I have a partnership with Vivian. I cannot just abandon that relationship without careful consideration." "I understand," Harrison said. "Take the time you need, but I should mention one other factor. Your father's firm has been struggling. Their revenue is down significantly. There are rumors they might need to merge with another firm, or close entirely. If you join us, you will be positioned at one of the most successful firms in the state while his firm collapses. I am not saying that should influence your decision, but it is relevant context." I left the meeting with my mind churning. This was an extraordinary opportunity, one that would cement my reputation and provide resources far beyond what I currently had. But it also felt like the final blow against my father. If I joined Harrison's firm, the contrast between my success and his failure would become even more stark and public. I discussed the offer with Vivian that evening. She listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and then surprised me with her response. "You should take it," she said. "This is the opportunity of a lifetime. You cannot turn it down because of loyalty to our partnership. I will be fine. I have other clients now, other attorneys. You helped me build something sustainable. I do not want you to sacrifice your career out of misplaced obligation." "Are you certain?" I asked. "Absolutely," she said. "Go join Harrison's firm. Show everyone, especially your father, exactly how successful you can be without any help from his legacy." I accepted Harrison's offer the next day. The announcement was made 2 weeks later, after all the partnership agreements were finalized. The legal community reacted with a mix of congratulations and gossip. Everyone understood the implications. I had gone from being excluded from my father's small firm to becoming a partner at one of the most prestigious firms in the state. My father's firm officially announced layoffs the same week. They were reducing staff by 40%, cutting back to a skeleton crew of attorneys and support personnel. The announcement cited economic pressures and client losses. It did not mention me by name, but everyone in the legal community understood the connection. Austin called me the day after the layoff announcement. "Dad is devastated," he said. "He is not handling this well at all. The firm is basically finished. We can only take on small matters now. Everything else, all the complex corporate work, is gone. I am sorry he is struggling, I said, and I partly meant it. Despite everything, some small part of me still remembered the father who had taught me to read legal documents when I was 12, who had seemed proud when I got into law school. But that man had made a choice 2 years ago that destroyed our relationship. I could not save him from the consequences of his own prejudice. My first month at Harrison's firm exceeded every expectation. I had an office on the 40th floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the mountains. I had 2 junior associates assigned to help with my cases, a paralegal with 15 years of experience, and access to research databases and expert consultants that made complex legal work significantly easier. The firm held a reception to introduce me to their existing clients and referral sources. It was held at an upscale hotel, with perhaps 200 attorneys, business people, and professionals in attendance. Harrison gave a short speech, welcoming me to the firm and highlighting my recent successes. Several clients from my previous firm attended, including Janet from Blackstone and Gloria from Pinnacle. They both gave enthusiastic endorsements of my work during the networking portion of the evening. My father was not invited, obviously, but word of the reception spread through the legal community. According to Thomas, who attended and later shared details, people were talking about how quickly I had risen from being excluded from a family firm to joining one of the most prestigious practices in the state. The story was becoming legend, a cautionary tale about the dangers of discrimination and the rewards of recognizing talent regardless of gender. But the most significant moment came 3 months into my time at Harrison's firm. I was in a deposition for a complex commercial dispute when I encountered an attorney representing the opposing party. His name was Gregory, and he worked for a mid-sized firm that my father had recently joined as a contract attorney. My father could no longer sustain his own practice, so he had taken a position doing overflow work for other firms. It was a stunning reversal for someone who had once run his own successful practice. Gregory and I were professional during the deposition, but during a break, he mentioned something that caught my attention. "I have been working with your father on some matters," Gregory said. "He is very knowledgeable, of course, but he seems distracted. Angry. He talks a lot about his daughter who destroyed his firm." "That is an inaccurate characterization of what happened," I said calmly. "I figured as much," Gregory said. "We did our due diligence before bringing him on board. The real story seems to be that he excluded you from his firm for discriminatory reasons. You built your own successful practice, and his clients preferred your work. That is not destruction. That is consequences." This validation from a neutral third party felt significant. The narrative my father had tried to create, where I was the villain who betrayed family loyalty, was being replaced by the truth. The legal community was understanding what had really happened. They were recognizing that my success was earned, and his failure was self-inflicted. 2 weeks later, I ran into my father at the courthouse. We were both there for different hearings, and we encountered each other in the hallway outside the courtrooms. He looked older than I remembered, his face lined with stress, his suit slightly rumpled. He saw me and stopped walking. "Congratulations on your success," he said. His voice was flat, emotionless. "You must be very satisfied with how everything turned out." "I am satisfied that merit mattered more than prejudice," I said. "I am satisfied that I proved you wrong about women in law." "You destroyed me to prove a point," he said. "You took everything I built and scattered it to the wind. Was it worth it? Do you feel vindicated now?" I considered my response carefully. This was the confrontation I had been both wanting and dreading. The moment where my father finally acknowledged what he had done and what I had accomplished. "You destroyed yourself," I said quietly. "You had a daughter who was passionate about law, who worked harder than anyone else, who earned her credentials through merit. You could have built something amazing with me. Instead, you chose prejudice. You told me I was not good enough because of my gender. Every single thing that has happened since then has been a consequence of that choice." You did this to yourself." "I was protecting the legacy," he said. "I was maintaining tradition." "You were maintaining sexism," I said. "And it cost you everything. Your firm is gone. Your reputation is damaged. Your clients are working with me instead of you. That is not my fault. That is yours." He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in his expression. Not acceptance exactly, but recognition, understanding that he had made a catastrophic mistake, and there was no way to undo it. "I hope you are happy," he said finally. "I am successful," I said. "Whether that makes me happy is complicated, but I am successful in spite of you, and that is something I will never forget." He walked away without responding. I watched him go, this man who had once been the most important figure in my life, now reduced to a cautionary tale about the cost of discrimination. I had my hearing, won the preliminary motion I was arguing, and returned to my office at Harrison's firm. My paralegal had left a message that 3 potential new clients had called requesting consultations. My practice was thriving. My reputation was growing. Everything I had worked for was succeeding. That evening I met Vivian for dinner at a restaurant downtown. She had invited me to celebrate a victory in one of her recent cases. We talked about our work, our plans, the state of the legal profession. At one point, she raised her glass. "To success earned through merit," she said. "To proving them all wrong," I said, and we drank. The final piece of vindication came 6 months later. The Phoenix Business Journal published a feature article about successful women in law. I was interviewed along with several other female attorneys who had built significant practices. The article discussed the challenges women still faced in the legal profession, including discrimination, unequal opportunities, and the assumption that men were naturally better suited for leadership roles. The reporter asked me directly about my father's firm and my decision to build my own practice. I considered how much to reveal, how honest to be about what had happened. In the end, I decided to tell the truth. "My father told me I could not join his firm because women do not make good lawyers," I said. "He gave my position to my brother despite the fact that I was more qualified by every objective measure. It was devastating at the time, but it ultimately forced me to prove that merit matters more than gender. I built a successful practice by providing excellent legal services to clients who valued competence over tradition. In retrospect, my father did me a favor. He showed me that I could not rely on family connections or legacy. I had to earn everything through my own work." The article was published with a photo of me in my office at Harrison's firm. The headline read, "Rising Stars, Women Transforming Phoenix Legal Scene." My quote about my father was included prominently, framed as an example of the obstacles women still faced, but also as a story of overcoming discrimination through excellence. The reaction was immediate and widespread. I received dozens of emails from other women attorneys sharing their own stories of discrimination and congratulating me on speaking publicly about mine. Several mentioned that my story had inspired them to pursue opportunities they had been hesitant about. The visibility was professionally valuable, but more importantly, it felt like a public validation of everything I had fought for. My mother called the day after the article was published. "Your father saw the article," she said quietly. "He is humiliated. He feels like you publicly shamed him." "I told the truth," I said. "If the truth is humiliating, that is his problem, not mine." "He is talking about trying to repair things with you," she said. "He mentioned possibly reaching out, attempting some kind of reconciliation. After everything he did, after all the damage he caused, now he wants reconciliation, because I am successful and he is not?" "I think he finally understands that he was wrong," my mother said. "I think he sees what he lost by excluding you from his life and his practice." "That is not good enough," I said. "Understanding you were wrong is not the same as making amends. It is certainly not enough to undo 2 years of pain and struggle." My father did reach out 3 days later. He sent a letter to my office, handwritten on personal stationery. It was 2 pages long, carefully worded, and utterly inadequate. The letter acknowledged that he had perhaps been too traditional in his views about women in law. It suggested that circumstances had changed since his initial decision to exclude me from his firm. It proposed that we move forward and rebuild our relationship now that I had established myself successfully. There was no real apology, no acknowledgement of the discrimination I had faced, no recognition of the pain he had caused or the opportunities he had stolen. Just a vague suggestion that maybe we could get past this unpleasantness now that my success was undeniable. I drafted 3 different responses before deciding on the final version. I kept it brief and clear. Dad, your letter suggests reconciliation, but it lacks the fundamental acknowledgement necessary for that to be possible. You excluded me from your firm explicitly because of my gender. You told me women do not make good lawyers. You gave my rightful position to Austin despite knowing he was less qualified. These were not mistakes or misunderstandings. They were deliberate choices based on prejudice. Until you can acknowledge that directly and apologize for the specific harm you caused, there is nothing to reconcile. I have built a successful career despite your discrimination, not because of any support from you. I am proud of what I have accomplished, and I am grateful that I was forced to prove my worth independently rather than inheriting a legacy I did not earn. That is all I have to say on this matter. I sent the letter and felt a sense of closure. My father had tried to extend an olive branch, but it was too little and too late. He wanted absolution without real accountability. I was not interested in providing that. The years that followed confirmed that I had made the right choices. My practice at Harrison's firm continued to grow. I developed a specialty in complex commercial disputes and became known for creative legal strategies that protected clients while avoiding unnecessary litigation. I took on several high-profile cases that resulted in favorable settlements and established precedents in corporate law. Meanwhile, my father's career faded into obscurity. He continued doing contract work for various firms, never regaining the prominence he had once enjoyed. Austin eventually left law entirely, taking a position in business development at a software company where he was apparently much happier and more successful. The family firm that had been our father's pride dissolved completely, its assets sold to pay remaining debts. Within 5 years, I was named one of the top corporate attorneys in Arizona. I had proven everything I set out to prove. Merit mattered. Gender discrimination was not just morally wrong, but strategically foolish, and the legacy my father had protected so jealously had disappeared, while the career he denied me had flourished beyond anything I initially imagined. The vindication was complete, absolute, and entirely deserved. My father learned too late that excluding talented people based on prejudice does not protect a legacy. It destroys it. His firm collapsed under the weight of his discrimination, while I built something better from nothing. He chose tradition over excellence, gender over ability, pride over wisdom. The cost of those choices became the defining story of his professional life. As for me, I built my success on a foundation of competence, determination, and the refusal to accept artificial limitations. Every victory felt earned. Every achievement proved a point that should never have needed proving. And every time I walked into my office, I was reminded that the best revenge was not destruction, but excellence, not sabotage but success, not bitterness but building something better than what I had been denied. Looking back on my revenge journey, I realized it had never really been about hurting my father. It had been about proving to myself and to the world that his judgment of me was fundamentally wrong. That mission was accomplished completely, and the satisfaction of that accomplishment would last far longer than any momentary anger or desire for vengeance ever could.